Hello to everybody, this is Stefano, Master in Geopolitics channel from Italy. Today we have a special guest, Greg Mustreader, that is a Russian blogger. And today we will listen from his voice, his experience, how his life changed in this special year. And if you have any question for him, I will give him immediately the stand. Just send it in the YouTube chat or Facebook chat, whatever. I will collect it for the stream and I give immediately to him. For the next days, we will have other streams. We stopped for a while, for 1 week, because we are planning the second season of streams. Tomorrow we will have a very special guest from Israel, but I will tell you at the end. So, Grigory, this is your stand. So be ready to talk about your experience.
So, am I live? Okay, great. Thank you, Stefano, for inviting me to talk. Thanks everyone for joining in. My name is Greg Mustreader. I'm Russian. Before the start of the war, I lived in Moscow. I was a popular Russian blogger and host of podcasts. But after the start of the war, I had to leave Russia. And during the last 6 months, I've been living in Turkey, in Kash. This is southern Turkey. I'll speak about my experience and what led me to this decision, and also about the news that we have all received today. You probably have heard, or you will hear in the near future, that Vladimir Putin has announced the official mobilization of Russians in the army. 300,000 people will be enlisted to join the army to go to the war with Ukraine. Unfortunately, I have a lot of feelings, emotions to share about this, so I will speak about that as well. And also, I will be happy to answer all of your questions in respect of how I, as a Russian, perceive this war, what happened to me, what's happening to me now, what's happening to my blogging and podcasting career, and stuff like that. So where do I start? Let's start with my background. I have been blogging for over 7 years now in Russian. It all started as a hobby. I was a lawyer in an international law firm, but suddenly, gradually, my blogs started gaining popularity, and I had over several 100,000 subscribers on Telegram, which is a popular messaging and social networking app in Russia. And also, I've started my own YouTube channel in Russian, and it currently has 205,000 subscribers, so over 200,000 subscribers. It's called Knижный Чел. If any of you speak Russian, you can check it out. My main topics of interest that I covered in my blogs and podcasts are the future of society, trends of development of our society, technology, politics, and books, because I love reading books, hence my nickname, my pseudonym, Mustreader. And everything was well. I should say that not everything was not everything was all right. Obviously, we all knew that Russia was an authoritarian country and has been for many years under the rule of an authoritarian leader, some might say dictator, Vladimir Putin, who has oppressed all the opposition, destroyed all the opposition media, who has put in jail many opposition leaders, and who has made it dangerous for people to speak out against him. This has been happening for quite some time, and I was always against this, and I was always in the opposition, and I expressed my views in my blogs. But overall, looking back at those times before the start of the war, I can say that it was, in comparison, it was a good times, relatively peaceful, and for Russia, this was a period for ordinary Russians that were not affected by things that Putin did to the opposition. For those who were not actively engaged in politics, this was a peaceful and relatively stable period of time of history. Obviously, now it has changed. We'll speak about that a bit later. So I was blogging, and I made my career in blogging and in podcasting. I invited many public intellectuals, scientists, politicians, businessmen, and entrepreneurs, bloggers. They all came to my podcast, writers, quite famous ones as well, not only from Russia, but also from abroad, such as like Frédéric Becbédère from France, for example, or the gerontologist Aubrey de Grey from the United States, or philosopher Peter Singer. So many interesting personalities came to my podcast, and I discussed with them where our world is headed, what will happen in the future, which books should we read to understand the world better, stuff like that. And at some moment, I decided to start an English blog, a blog in English as well, in addition to my blogs in Russian. It's called Greg Mustreader. You can find it on YouTube. It started out as just a YouTube channel for my podcasts, video versions of my podcasts, but also I at some point started uploading videos where I myself alone in front of camera also explained some things that interested me, or recommended books, or spoke about where our future is going. So this was my like side project, because my main project was my Russian blog, and my main audience was from Russia. But then came the start of the war, and I'm already seeing some questions in the chat. I will definitely answer them when the topic when I explaining the topic of war. So then came the start of the war, 24th of February 2022. I was with my girlfriend and with our pets in Moscow, sleeping in our flat, and we woke up. I was checking the social media and the messages in messaging services, and I've seen that everybody's writing about the war. It felt kind of surreal, really surreal, because obviously we have all seen the news that the American special services warn Ukraine and the world that Putin is going to invade Ukraine, but I didn't believe it. I thought that he's not as crazy. For me, it was like unimaginable. I understood that he is like a kind of a violent, ruthless political leader, dictator, even. But I had not even thought that he would invade Ukraine, a country where we all, well, not all, but many Russians have friends and relatives even from Ukraine. I have some members of my team from Ukraine. I have very many subscribers of my blogs from Ukraine. For you to realize, for example, my YouTube channel, it has 200,000 subscribers, the Russian channel, Knижный Chel, and I think 80% or 70% of them are Russians, and 15% of them are Ukrainians. So dozens of thousands of people, and many of them I know personally. I've been to Kiev. I love Ukraine, and I love those people, and it was unimaginable for me. I had not even thought that this would happen, but we've seen the news, we realized that this indeed is happening. And I immediately, me and my girlfriend as well, we both were in shock. For the first couple of days, we didn't know what to do. We were in a state of first denial, then rage, then acceptance. Well, no acceptance for that. I do not accept this even now. But we started to think what should we do, and we decided that we should leave the country. I have published several posts on my social media, Russian social media, about the war and about the fact that I condemn it, about the fact that I consider Putin an evil man who has started a bloodthirsty war that will be a tragedy for both Ukraine and Russia and the whole world. I have spoken out quite against the war. But we decided that considering the fact that Putin is not stopping and is invading Ukraine, there will be likely repercussions for those who say anything against this, for bloggers, for opposition leaders. And we were right. We left the country in the beginning of March, and practically at the same time, maybe one day before that or two days after that, there was a new law adopted by the parliament in Russia that said that if you spread the so-called disinformation about the Russian army, you will be sentenced to prison up to 15 years in prison. And in practice, this law was adopted to punish those who say that this war is a war, that white is white and black is black, that this is not a so-called special military operation. This is the term used by the official propaganda, but that this is like a real war and a horrible one. So in practice, this law was used and is still used to punish everyone who thinks different and who has the courage to say this out loud. So we had to leave the country. Me, my girlfriend, our dog. This is her portrait. The ducks, I mean, and our cat. We packed our bags and we left the country. We went to Istanbul first, because Turkey does not require a visa from Russians. And then we ended up in Kash, southern Turkey. Some of our friends recommended this town. It's a nice place, and we decided that we will stay for the time being here. Also about the blogging, I have made some videos in English, and I have uploaded them to my TikTok account. You can find me on TikTok. Just type in Mustreader, Greg Mustreader, you will find me. And I have recorded, my girlfriend actually came with me to the Red Square, the center of Moscow. We came there, it was end of February, freezing cold still. I'm in a Alaska coat, and I'm saying in these videos that I'm a Russian blogger who is against the war. We are all in shock, all our friends, relatives, everybody is in shock about what Putin has started. We are against it. People are protesting, but they are all detained and put into jail or arrested at least for 2 weeks for going out on the street. So I've spoken out about that. Then we left the country. Then we arrived in Istanbul. I'm checking my TikTok, and I see that these videos have attracted several million views. So they now I think the most popular TikTok, the one that I recorded on the Red Square, has gained 4.5 million views. So my TikTok started going viral. My English language TikTok. I should say that I have also a TikTok in Russian, and I used to have I used to consider my English blogs like a hobby with a small audience, but suddenly I gained some audience. I currently have 130,000 subscribers on English language TikTok. Uh, so I started recording and releasing content about Russia and the war on my TikTok and on my Instagram. And I wanted the main purpose was to get across to the world that not all Russians are in favor of this war. That actually most Russians who have access to information and who have access to foreign media, for example, and not just the Russian state-controlled media, because all media in Russia are now state-controlled, and there are no independent media. They have all been or either blocked or closed, or their journalists are in jail now. So if you don't have access to information, you may support the war because you believe the propaganda, but everybody who has access to information is strongly against. Everybody I know and everybody from my social circle is against. So I wanted to get across this message to foreign audience that there are Russians who stand with the world, who stand with Ukrainian people who are under constant bombing, shelling. There are Russians who condemn the war crimes that are committed in this war by Russian soldiers, unfortunately. So that being said, I wanted to have some platform where I can express my thoughts about that, and I'm still doing that. Check out my TikTok and Instagram if you are interested. Since that time, I have returned also to normal content, not just the content about the war, but also content about the future of society, about technology and stuff like that. But obviously, the main topic today that I think about every day and that keeps me up at night is the situation in Ukraine, this war, and what's even more horrible is the fact that today Putin has announced the mobilization of people in the army in Russia. So today it has started, and many of my friends left the country also since the start of the war, but some have stayed, but most of them are currently thinking about also leaving the country because they don't want to go to this war. They don't want to kill our brothers in Ukraine, and they absolutely do not approve none of what is happening. And today there's going to be a demonstration in Moscow. I think in like half an hour it starts, but I don't think that it will be successful. Unfortunately, Putin has an extremely well-equipped and well-manned special forces, military forces that are protecting him from all the opposition. And the so-called Rosgvardia, for example, the National Guard, they have been trained to beat the protesters with their batons and to use all the special equipment to disperse the crowd. And also they put everybody who since the start of the war, they have been like immediately, like 10 seconds. You go to the Red Square, for example, you have like a banner that says no war, for example. 10 seconds pass, you are escorted to the Avtozak. Avtozak is like this special car truck where they put people, arrest them and drive them to the places where they keep them. So 10 seconds pass and you are detained. So this is the reality in Russia. And today maybe more people will go out, but still they will probably all be detained. So this is all very sad. And obviously I'm not in the slightest happy about what's happening, but we are trying to do what we can. I continue operating my blogs from Turkey. I record podcasts. Sometimes we go with my team to other countries where there are Russians, for example, scientists, movie actors, directors, writers, bloggers who have also emigrated from Russia, left Russia since the start of the war, and we record podcasts, interviews with them, and I publish them on my Russian channel. So I still speak a lot about Russia and about what's happening to Russians as well, not just to international audience. But also I have my English language blogs, my TikTok in English, my YouTube channel, Mustreader in English. The link is in the description of this video. You can go look it up. I have some videos about the war there as well. So I, in parallel, operate my Russian blogs and my English blogs. I try to do what I can because that's the least I can do. I try to advocate against the war. I try to support the charities that help the people who have suffered most, the refugees, for example, the sick people, the people who want to leave the country, single mothers, their kids, etc. I mean, both organizations in Russia and in Ukraine. I support them, and I support them by also recommending my subscribers to do what they can to volunteer for those organizations or to donate money to them. So that's what I'm doing currently. That's what I've been doing for the last months. Now I think I'll get to the questions that have been asked because I see many of them. So I've basically answered the question about why I decided to move outside Russia, because otherwise I would probably be in jail now for my position against the war, or at least this would be a sizable risk. Maybe not 100% risk, but this is quite a significant risk, because there are some journalists and bloggers who have been convicted under this new law about the so-called disinformation about Russian army. This is the sad reality. Why Turkey? Because Turkey does not require a visa from Russians, and because it seemed like a good idea to go to a country that is that does not act openly against Russians, because in many countries there is a lot of Russophobia currently, like Georgia, for example. They believe that all Russians should be punished, that the collective responsibility should be enforced, and that all Russians are evil people. Unfortunately, they think so. Not all of them, obviously, but many people in such countries as like Georgia or like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. Obviously, I know why they think like that. They have a history with the Soviet Union, and they have been oppressed, and they have their own reasons to think in this way. But it's obvious that in such conditions, it's not very comfortable for Russians to live. And in Turkey, I have not encountered any Russophobia, any negative sentiments towards Russians, because people here realize that if you are Russian, it doesn't mean that you are a fan of Putin and that you are in favor of this war and that you voted for him, for example. I never voted for Putin. I always went to the elections and I voted against him. I voted for opposition candidates. But that, unfortunately, that did not help, because, as you know, there have been always, during the last years, falsifications, manipulations of elections in Russia. And even if all people voted against Putin, I think he would have made it as if he won, using those manipulations and falsifications. Okay, next question. What are the most noticeable effects in your life after February? Well, I moved to another country. I never wanted to. I never planned to move to another country. I like traveling. I've been to 45, 46 already countries in the world. I'm an avid traveler, so to say, but I love Russia and I wanted to spend my life there. But because of everything that I mentioned, I had to flee. I had to leave everything that I had there, my friends, many of whom also left, but some stayed. My way of life in Moscow, I miss it. I miss my country. I miss Moscow. I miss my friends. But obviously, this was the only way to proceed. Another way to proceed would be to shut up and not say anything and just keep your mouth closed, but that's not something that I would do, and that's not something that's in line with my moral principles. Next question, what are the real risks today in the Russian Federation for those who express their opinion if this does not comply with government propaganda? Well, basically, if you are an ordinary citizen and you express your opinion in the kitchen while speaking to your friends, you are not at risk. It's not the Stalin times of 1930s. It's not as horrible as back then. That's maybe the only positive thing now that can give us hope. You can still express your opinion in private, but in public, if you do that, you stand the risk of criminal prosecution. And if you dare to go out to a demonstration currently, you will be detained immediately, as I said. So these are the risks.
Yeah, I can confirm to you that as we said in advance, there is a lot of testimony about riots now in Russia. I had like from 2-3 oblasts minimum, and the people are immediately detained, as you said. So let me put. Okay, this is another one. Like, don't you think that there are real valid reasons to invade Ukraine?
No, I don't. Well, obviously, geopolitics is a complex topic, and it's not like all black and white. I would not say that that I 100% support all actions of Zelensky's government, for example, or all actions of Ukrainians towards their regional minorities. I would probably, had it not been for the war, I would discuss and debate some of the decisions made in Ukraine. But now is not the time. Obviously, the war does not have any valid justification. All the justifications that Putin invokes are just pretexts. They are just pretexts to justify the invasion. He has his reasons. Probably he wants more power. He wants to retain control of Russians by. He wanted initially to have like a small victorious war, air quotes, to boost his ratings. Maybe he thought this would help him stay in power longer. By the way, the small victorious war is a quote by Nikolai II, the Russian emperor, who wanted to have a small victorious war against Japan in 1904, 1905. History has taught us that this war was not small and not victorious. We lost. So this is the case of history repeating itself. So yeah, Putin probably had his own reasons, cynical and pragmatic, maybe in his worldview. But I don't think that this war is in the slightest in the interests of Russia or Russian people, because it leads only to catastrophic results. And obviously, if you speak about in a humanitarian paradigm, if you consider the human lives and value of human life, I think even some pragmatic considerations and reasons would not justify people dying over there.
I agree with you, but let me okay. Also, this one for me it's very interesting, because about geopolitics, I can also contribute later to the questions. But this is like, can you describe from your point of view the division of the Russian society, who supports the government and who does not? It's very clear division between social groups, age of level of education. Why asking you this? Because there was like a Levada Center poll.
Mm-hmm.
The last one is in August, and it's still like saying that 76% of the public it's still supporting the government politics. Do you think that these polls are real, and what can depends on? And the last add to the question, it's like, Actually, I read that in the statistic of Levada said that only 1/4 of the Russian citizens have the foreign passport. Because if you can describe this one, because the people that are not used to Russia don't know that you have two passports in Russia. No, so and it's interesting for me that the people that, by my experience, the people that is more supporting of the government, it's the people who travel less, the people who stay more inside, like Russia. If you can, like, say the opinion about.
So I'll cover these questions one by one.
Okay.
First of all, the division of Russian society. Obviously, it exists. Obviously, there are people who support the war. Their number is diminishing with every day, every week of the war, I think. I don't have access to the real, not rigged polls, but this is obvious. I'm talking to many people in Russia, and I think I feel the so to say zeitgeist of the spirit of the moment. Obviously, the number 76% in favor of the war, and previously there were even numbers like 80% in favor of the war. This is total BS, total nonsense. Because first of all, I've made a video on my YouTube channel, Mustreader. Link is in the description. You can check it out. It's about the polls and about whether the Russians really support this war or not. Basically, I should say that there are some Russians, maybe 20%, maybe 30%. I doubt that more. There are some people who support the war, but they are uneducated or significantly less educated than those who are against the war. B, they are less informed. They generally receive their sources of information by means of the TV or other Russian state-controlled media, maybe newspapers, or radio. And if you are brainwashed, imagine yourself in a vacuum, in an information vacuum, where you receive no information but only the information from the state-controlled media every day, day after day, year after year, and they brainwash you into believing that the Ukrainians are Nazis, that they are doing some horrible things over there, and that we should liberate them from those Nazis, etc., etc. I think if you don't have access to alternative information, you may believe it, and if you are not very well educated. So the people who are not very well educated and who watch their news on TV, some of them believe this and approve of this war. But I'm definitely sure that it's not 76%. And also, even if you believe these polls, you should look at different statistics. How many people refuse to answer? And actually, I've read some articles by experts in sociology, social sciences, how you conduct a poll. And they have all said that in Russian polls regarding the war, all those polls, most people refuse to answer, and like 3 times. This number is 3 times more than usually. So usually, always some people refuse to answer in the polls, street polls. You walk into your office, you are busy, you have no time for polls. Yes, many people refuse. But in those polls, 3 times, this number is thrice more.
The results are, let's fake, because you have a very big group that is not giving their answer.
Yeah, and they are mostly refusing because they are against, but they are afraid, because there is this thing in Russian mentality. Even if you know that it's not Stalin's USSR times now, they will not put you in jail for saying on the poll that you are against. But still, they are afraid and they do not answer. And also, I've seen some polls, independent polls in Russia, where they ask, "Do you support the war?" And then after some time, they ask this question once again, but in a less direct way, in a more subtle way. And people answer first that yes, they support the war, but after some questions, they open up and they say, well, not really. So it also goes to say that the way you phrase the question also matters. For example, do you support the actions of our President Vladimir Putin to conduct a special military operation in Ukraine? This phrasing will get much more yes answers than the phrasing, do you support the invasion of Ukraine by Russia? This will get different statistics. So all these topics I cover in my video about that. So definitely I think that, yes, the division exists, but most people do not support the war.
Another thing, like in adding to this question, do you think that also the mentality of the people that is living, let's say Moscow and Peter, so Moscow and St. Petersburg, it's a little bit more in a vacuum in respect like we live in Far East or after the Urals, because a lot of people that never went to Russia, let's say, doesn't know that there is this huge difference between Moscow and Peter and the rest of the Russia. So
yeah, I can explain. I've been to many parts of Russia. I've been to Far East. I've been to the north. I've been to the south. I've been to like 35 maybe regions of Russia, and they differ very much. And in some regions, the support of Putin is much higher than in others. Although even in the most remote regions, there are people who disapprove, who get their news independently, who use VPN to access independent media, for example. But the proportion of these people is fewer in those regions. So yes, in Moscow and St. Petersburg, the number of opposition supporters is much higher. Also, Yekaterinburg is one of such cities. Khabarovsk, yes. So there are some cities where I would definitely say that the opposition numbers even before the war was probably even higher than the Putin supporters number, or at least comparable. Now, definitely, after the war, the more people started believing that Putin is not a hero, but rather a monster or a tyrant or whatever you call him. So, but in some regions and in some villages, people don't have access to internet or they don't use it. They just watch the news. And unfortunately, in such areas, more people support the war than in big cities. That's a fact.
Like, to put another question still to the management, do you think that this conflict wouldn't have happened if Putin wasn't the leader of Russia? So, like, even considering that Eastern NATO expansion remained a critical issue for many generations of Russian leaders, like after, let's say, it's written by Russian leaders, but this thing started 30 years ago in 1991. So. When there was the famous phrase that Gorbachev heard, like not 1 inch eastward, and then like NATO moved.
Yeah. Well, basically, if Russians were ruled by a different person, if we had a different president, a more democratic leader who would be more effective and who would be more interested in the real say of the people, what they want, what they believe, I think the NATO expansion would not be a threat, because Ukraine would not move towards the West, because the historic ties, the cultural ties, the economic ties between Russia and Ukraine have always been so deep, incredibly deep, that it's unthinkable even now to think that they have been broken. If we had a more effective leader and a democratically elected leader who was considering the interests of his own nation, he would definitely use soft power instruments to bind the Russian and the Ukrainian nations closer together, not by military force, but by cultural ties, by economic ties. And it's in the natural interests of both of those countries to act in unison, uniformly, not necessarily to be like a sole country, a single country like the USSR or the empire, but to be two independent countries who are allies, who are strategic allies, who are economic allies, and that would prevent Ukraine from becoming part of NATO naturally. This is very obvious for me and for most of my friends who also like history and politics and stuff like that. And also, if Putin's goal was to prevent NATO expansion, then let's face it, he failed miserably. He led to NATO expansion, and his invasion was the catalyst of further expansion of NATO in the Scandinavia, for example. So if that's the goal, then he'd better not do anything. That would be much better for stopping the expansion.
Another one that it's more like internal politics. Do you see any politician coming in Russia who may be the best to lead and why? And connected to this one, still Charles. In your opinion, do you think that Navalny is a legitimate opposition leader or is a Western-backed tool?
Well, I had my doubts about Navalny, and I don't endorse all his political agenda. But now I think realistically he is the only one who has the chance to become the leader in democratic elections in future Russia. And he has, I think, earned our trust. He is in prison, and he has been in prison for some quite a long time now. And it's obvious that he is a sincere person who is a patriot, who returned to Russia after being poisoned, after knowing that he will probably go to jail, but he still did it. So he's a hero. Maybe I don't support all of his political agenda, but I think that he has a so-called moral capital, as they say. So he has this respect of people, and since going to jail, he will also have respect of more people once he gets out. Something like Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela.
But anybody else, Gregory, that could be, let's say, another political party or except like let's say the last election, it was like the only one that gained a lot of votes was like the former Communist Party, but like real opposition, it's real active or something that is underground.
We cannot even use this as an example, the elections in Russia, because they do not allow independent parties to participate, because you have to meet some criteria to be allowed to go to the elections. And the current political regime does not allow, if, for example, I or any other person in Russia decided to create a political party and run for elections, they would find some formal pretext to not let us do that. They will say, your signatures of your voters are fake. And you say, no, they are not. Here are my voters who have signed for me. This is all real. Here is the expertise. Experts prove that this is not fake. No, they are fake. You are not allowed to participate. This is what happened to some of my friends. I have some friends who are young politicians in Russia. And for example, one of them is Roman Uniman. He's a great guy, and he has been participating in elections for several years now, municipal elections and also regional elections. And he has a great team. He has found money by crowdfunding. So he has raised money on the internet. Something like a young Navalny, but a little bit different agenda, political. He's independent. He's smart. He's eloquent. But all those people, they are not even allowed to go to serious elections. He was allowed once to go to municipal elections. After that, they do not allow him anymore because they've seen that he is a great political leader and he's a problem. So that's what happening. So the problem for up and coming political leaders in Russia is that nobody knows them. So there are lots of great, altruistic, eloquent, clever young guys who want to change the country, but they don't have the popularity. So Navalny has already the popularity. Many people know him. Obviously, many people know about him only in a negative light because the state media promotes the agenda that Navalny is a Western-backed tool, as somebody wrote in your questions comment section. Well, this is just the agenda of the political regime to smear dirt on any individual who tries to oppose them. So if you try to run against Putin, there will be articles about you in the media saying that you are a Western foreign agent or that you are like a criminal or something like that. They will try to invent unimaginable nonsense about you, but people will believe it because you control the media, and whoever controls the media controls what people think, unfortunately. So I think that's kind of obvious.
Greg, if I can, Charles, you said the US also use the same method to suppress the Green Party in election. It's not only a Russian thing, but the main different thing is that in the US, it's very difficult to make a third party because you need a representative in any of the 50 states. It's a different thing. In this, it's, I think by my own experience, it's really difficult to Russia to pass, as Gregory said, like the municipal level. You have some, let's say, town councilor that is like in opposition. Also, the last weeks there was like this letter made by some opposition town councilor in Peter or whatever. But it's a ridiculous number of people in the total amount of politicians. Other question, okay. Only about before, because you said I asked you the question about the groups, educated people or whatever. Like it's not about uneducated or brainwashed. What like Greg want, I think, to say, and it's the same that Charles said. It's what I felt. I went in Russia many times. Like Charles said the right thing. It's like it's a siege mentality. And I think that a lot of Russian people believe themselves attacked from abroad. And when you are like this feeling to be attacked, you close yourself and you are not open to foreign, let's say, information. And if you are under a siege, it's very difficult to have let's say the right point of view, the right picture. I had a discussion with a friend yesterday that is in Armenia. Now another huge problem with the war with Azerbaijan about Nagorno-Karabakh, a super mess. And I have to talk with her a lot because she was afraid she have to fly out of the country because she live in Canada and she was now in Armenia. And she asked me if she had to change the ticket in advance because she was afraid that they cut the flights. And if you are reading only Armenian news, it's like disaster is happening. Tomorrow Armenia is finished. And it's only to push pressure to the people and whatever, because the mission, let's say the goal of Azerbaijan is taking Nagorno-Karabakh and like the southern corridor to Iran, not to destroy Armenia. And but if you are inside, it's different because you see, let's say, only your truth. Questions.
And I want to respond to the. I did not say that all people who support Putin and the war are brainwashed. I was just saying that Putin and his regime try to brainwash the people and have been doing this for many years. And obviously, there are people who have access to independent information and who still support the war because they are, I don't know, cynical. They want to to their country to expand, no matter what, no matter the cost of lives. But those people are in the strong minority. Most people who support the war, obviously, they're just misinformed. Not necessarily brainwashed. Brainwashed is a strong term, but they are misinformed. They don't have access to alternative sources of information, and the sources of information that they have tell them that Russia is surrounded by enemies. We have to act immediately, otherwise the future of Russia is at stake. We will be destroyed. Our nation will be destroyed. And also in Ukraine, the power is held by Nazis. We hate Nazis. We need to defeat them. This is the narrative. So they believe it.
And Greg, I think that the use of the words is very important also psychologically, because if you use Nazi in Russia, because like Russia had like 20 million deaths during the Second World War. If you can compare in Italy, we had 600,000. So also Germany, that was one of the biggest death tolls, was 6 million. Russia more than 20. So when you and US 500,000. So if in any family you have death or relatives died in the Second World War, so if you say the word Nazi in Russia, you have a different.
It's a trigger.
Effect.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like something I'm in trouble. And okay, other questions. So when you talk about soft power, Charles said soft power is impossible if you don't have such money as the West. China win soft power because they cannot beat anything the West puts up. So the problem, and this is what I also listen from Russian's friend in politics, that probably also the economical battle on the Ukrainian ground was a little bit unfair, let's say, between the two blocks, because Russians can invest, but not so much like the others economically.
I would argue that you can look at the size of U.S. budget for lobbying, for example, in Ukraine. It's not as huge because the U.S. Politicians have to pursue other points of agenda, and their voters are interested mostly in other things. So they do not invest all the American money in making Ukraine adhere to the U.S. Political goals. No, this is not the first priority, not a second, not even the third priority. So with careful and clever use of resources that Russia has, and Russia has a lot of resources, mind you.
And and Gregory, I think that the most part of U.S. Taxpayer doesn't know where Ukraine is.
Yeah, so, and they don't care.
So it's a little bit exotic for them, this name. But so three questions that I missed before that were connected by the same users. Don't you think that Donbas citizens have the right to the self-determination? Plus, don't you think that Russians are under siege even before the war? You should see the really nasty races waving the West, more Russia bad, West Utopia. Then I will also answer with you with visual Russophobia. It's about we'll talk about Italy. Do you think that the lives of Donbas separatists matter? So it's the same user with three questions.
Okay, let me. I actually have one of the members of my team is from Donbas, from Donetsk. He left his city in 2014 when the war started. Well, everybody knows that the war actually started 8 years ago, but it was not as brutal and not as horrible back then. But it was also like a proxy war, or you can use any term you like. So yeah, I know that there are people. I have other acquaintances from Donbas region. There are people there who want independence. That's true. That's a fact. There are also people who don't want independence, who want to be part of Ukraine, and I would not have the courage to say that I know the exact percentage. I don't know. Nobody knows. Probably, maybe the internal intelligence of special forces of Russia and US, maybe they know, but we don't. But definitely there is no consensus in the society. As far as I know, most people who support joining Russia and independence of Donbas are older people. Younger people are more in favor of joining the European Union as part of Ukraine. So there are different opinions. I definitely think that all those opinions matter. And I am more of a libertarian kind of guy. I am all in favor of people determining themselves what they want to do, who they want to be, and which country they want to join. But the problem is that that's not the case currently, because there will be a referenda in Donbas, but they will be controlled by Russian army, and we all know how the results will be. They will be rigged. We don't know the actual results. So in a perfect world, yes, if there are many separatists in some region, they can vote, and if they vote in favor of separating, maybe they should separate. But that's not what happened in Donbas. Definitely not something that happened there. Also, the lives of all people should matter. That's a fact. Regarding the second question I was asked, I pity everybody who dies in this conflict, and I know that there are many also heroes fighting for all sides. Not all people there have even have had a chance to say yes or no when they were sent there to die. Most of them were not even able to say anything. They were, for example, in the Russian army, and they were told, hey, we are moving to a new location. We will not tell you where, but pack your bag. We are headed this way. And then they are there. Because, many people in Russian army who are fighting now there, they did not know and did not sign up for it. They were enlisted in the army, and then the war started, and they turned out to become military combatants. And most of them, I'm sure, most of them don't want to participate in this war, and they are dreaming of how to end this. This is a tragedy for all sides.
If it's the same user that asked about this referendum, self-determination, and whatever. If I can answer about this one, we have to remember, I can show you like the original documents. This was the original referendum of December 1991, like for the independence from Soviet Union. And it's interesting that the only part that was a little bit over 50%, it was 54 and 57, was Crimea and Sevastopol. But also Donbas region, if we can say Lugansk and Donetsk, was over 83% pro the independence of the Soviet Union. So it's you see, this one, it's like the no. It was only in Crimea, it was about 40%, but in Lugansk and Donetsk, you can see that it was like 13-12%. It's an interesting data because a lot of people, it's every time saying that all the population of Donbas was against Ukraine. In my point of view, I think that it's everything that is happening, it's a long story, more than 30 years ago, because the border of Soviet Union were designed not for the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we have a mix of people, very different ethnic groups. We can see the Baltic states, you have over the 20% of Russian ethnic group. If you go to Moldova, you have Gagausian that are Turkish, Ukrainian, Romanian, Russian, mixed. It's very the northern part of Kazakhstan will be another problem because it's ethnically Russians. So the problem is it's very difficult to use this strategy of Russian ethnicity to take one part of another country. And it's not the first time. 2008, you can see the case of Georgia. It was the same. South Ossetia and Abkhazia, the frozen conflict, Nagorno-Karabakh, Prednistrovia, Transnistria. So it's nothing new. The main thing is that if I was, let's say, the Ukrainian establishment, probably I could achieve a deal with to stay neutral. And because the problem was that involving NATO also externally in a proxy war, it can, let's say, push the fire on their liners in Moscow to make the excuse that we are under threat, so we need to invade. But if we look also to the communication, I saw today the message of President of Russian Federation, Putin. I listened many times that we are attacked. Russian Federation is attacked from abroad. But actually, nobody invaded Russia. So it's something that also to use the communication in a different way to, let's say, miscommunicate, as you said in advance, a message for the people that don't have different type of information. Okay, questions. This one, and then I will take the last one. If you have any information by your sources of, let's say, the degree of the suppression of a dissident in Russia. So, like if there is, I don't know, real data, how many people is in jail.
Okay, I have not been following the news as closely during the last several weeks as before, but I can say about the first couple of weeks of the war, there were 15,000 people arrested on the streets for protesting against the war. So they were arrested at least for like 7 or 14 days. This is the minimum term of arrest for protesting. Some of them would probably be put to prison after that for longer terms, because this law that I mentioned, the law against the so-called discreditation of Russian army, it also has a provision that if you I don't remember the exact wording, but it could be interpreted as if you go to a demonstration against the war in Ukraine, then you can go to jail for up to a maximum term of 15 years. So this is the provision that is used to put some people in jail, and many people are still in jail under this provision. Also, there are cases where journalists and bloggers go to jail for different reasons. For some of them, they use this law that I mentioned. For others, they use different laws. For example, Ivan Safronov, a journalist, a quite famous journalist, was sentenced to something like 20 years of prison last week for supposedly sharing state secrets of Russia. He never had any state secrets, and I've read the documents of the case, and I have consulted with my friends who are lawyers, and I'm a lawyer by education, and I see no proof of any secret sharing by him. It's definitely a rigged case. They just wanted to put him behind bars. So he's in jail now. Ilya Yashin, probably the second most well-known opposition politician after Navalny. He was also recently put in jail because he spoke out openly about the war. He said that this is a war, not a special operation. This is horrible. I am against this. I will not leave Russia. I will stay like Navalny. I am not afraid. And they put him behind bars. So he's in jail now. The ex-mayor of Yekaterinburg, the third largest city in Russia, Mr. Roizman, who is a well-respected opposition politician as well, has also been detained recently. So they even arrest political leaders who have some background and popularity. They also arrest them and charge them with this article of this law about the discreditation of army. All musicians, music artists who have expressed protests against the war, their concerts are stopped. Some of them have been detained, but mostly they just say that
not detained. Greg, I was saying DDT, the group rock.
DDT Shevchuk, yes, like very popular rock band, like I don't know, like the Beatles or Led Zeppelin in the US, the legendary rock band. They have expressed their negative views about the war. They have not even said that Putin is a war criminal. No, nothing that's strong. They just said that your motherland is not something that should be exploited, and all their concerts are banned now. All musicians who have said anything against the war are banned. Their concerts are banned in Russia. Most of them have left the country. Also, if you are, for example, a director of movies, you cannot make movies. If you are a director of theatrical plays, you are fired from the theater. So basically, all dissent is suppressed. Not necessarily violently, not necessarily you go to jail, but they make everything this in such a way that you cannot influence the people. You cannot hurt this beautiful image of the propaganda that everything is fine and we are not at war, everything is under control. And this image is starting nonetheless to collapse because you cannot stop the truth. Even if you censor everything, you start to block everything, the truth finally finds its way to people, I think.
If I can say something, I had some messages from the chat. Okay, about after the referendum in Ukraine, the only two former republics that didn't reach the level pre-dissolution of Soviet Union technically were Ukraine and Moldova. The only two of all the republics. Baltic states far beyond the level before because they are very fast, very small, very not Soviet also in mindset. As I can agree with Greg, I think that culturally Ukrainian and Russian are not the same, but mainly the
very
same
similar
type of mentality. Yeah. It's very similar. You can say that, for example, a little bit Galicia, Lvov, it's a little bit more Polish mentality, but still Eastern Europe. What I wanted to say to the people is that personal opinion, it's that the big difference also in West, we have biased information in some channels or whatever. But the main thing is that in Italian television, there is a lot of people, but it's pro-Putin. There is no problem. You can say, so it's what I'm saying to you. There is actually, we will have election next Sunday, only for the people that are not used to Italian politics. There is a big chance that the center-right will win the election, probably more right-center, because this time will be more right government. Nobody knows, but the polls said this one. The two biggest party of this group, one was Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy. The leaders was completely against the sanction to Russia before the war. And the second party, that is called Lega Nord, the leader is Matteo Salvini, was an admirer of Putin. So now everybody changed the public, in public, because there is the election. So I'm showing to you that the problem is that in politics, everything is very fluid. In Italy, you are free to say whatever you want, also if you are not in the edge of state television or government say. Another thing is that we don't have at all Russophobia in Italy. I can trust you. It's full of Russians everywhere, tourists or whatever. Also, it's a fake that Russians were not able to go out before today, because after today, I don't know. But before today, the only problem was that there was no direct flight. But if you have money, Turkish Airlines, go to Istanbul or via Baltics or via Serbia or via Armenia, Azerbaijan. There is one flight directly Moscow, Baku, Milan. So there is not a problem to come. The main difference it was that before it was very cheap. There was a flight Bergamo, Moscow with 80 euro. So the main difference, I think, that the limitation for the people was mainly affecting the people with low budget. The Russian people that were traveling with money, nothing changed for them. Question that what chances of Meloni became prime minister? We will make a stream tomorrow about the Italian election, or tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, before the election, because after 1 day before, nobody can speak about it in Italy. So I don't want to have any problems. I will not be in jail, but maybe sanctions. So no. It's because it's called like the electoral silence. You cannot. It's 1 day before the election, but actually the last polls said that center right had a coalition had 48% of the voters, and the center left 35, and the others it's about let's say 10% plus not voters. But the huge difference is that we don't know the decision of the, let's say, people that already are not, let's say, decided who to vote. But a big part, 20-30%, decided the last. So let's see what will happen. I think that also for the war in Ukraine, and then I will tell you my last question, it will be a lot of importance, free election that we will have in the next month. Italian election, why Italy is very important? Because it's one of the three founder members of the European Union. So, and Italy and Germany produced 50% of the sole production of all Europe. So take Italy and Germany, 50% of the production of Europe. And next month we will have a midterm of USA. So it will be interesting because Biden probably will lose the majority in the parliament. Plus we will have the presidential election in Brazil. But it's a very important country, exporter of food and materials. It's like Russia. My last question to you, it's this one. In your point of view, what could be like the exit strategy for both parts for this war? I will be more precise. What can Russia, let's say, renounce let's say on ground to still be a winner inside Russia? Let's say we won the war, but we make a deal. And what Ukraine, in your opinion, can give? Donbas, Crimea, nothing. Your point of view?
It's a great question, but I think that any victory would be, so to say, a Pyrrhic victory. So it would be connected with the more losses than more things lost than more things won.
Greg, so I will be more precise. Okay. In my opinion, we don't know what could happen after Putin. Maybe better, maybe not. Who knows? So, in the Putin mind, if I can say to you, what can I sell to the Russian public as a victory? Also, if it's a Pyrrhic victory. We liberated Donbas. I don't know.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I have stopped believing that Putin is a rational agent. So his actions are not currently, in my opinion, dictated by ratio, by rational considerations. But if we envision him acting rationally, I think that he would sell basically any outcome of this war that leads to stopping of military offensive and of deaths, because people in Russia are currently afraid of having to send their brothers, their sons to the war, who may or may not return home after that alive and well. So I think considering this, by contrast, announcing that the war is stopping, even though we have not taken some regions that were supposed to be taken as Putin promised, I think that could be presented to the nation as a victory, because the propaganda, can do miracles for you. So you can find justifications saying that, actually the goal was not this man, but that. And we have already seen this happening, because at the start, the goal was to liberate Ukraine from the so-called Nazis, and we were intending to take Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. But after a couple of months, the troops retreated from the Kiev direction, and I think it's no longer on the agenda. The Russian army no longer wants and intends to attack Kiev. They have concentrated on the Donbas region, so the goals have changed. And I think this has been sold to the public, so the propaganda has justified this by some means, and it will justify other actions as well. I think there will be some symbolic benefit to be obtained by Russia by the propaganda. Maybe Crimea will officially be recognized as part of Russia, maybe something else. I don't know whether Ukraine agrees to that. Depends on the political climate in the country and what Ukrainians want. Maybe they are not willing to give up any territory. Then we are in a stalemate position, and then I don't know how it may end. I think it will end at some point, but I'm not very optimistic about the date. I think it will be a long and horrible story.
Okay, so thank you so much, Gregory. We went over the hour, but we received a lot of questions from the public. So thank you for your time. Stay 1 second after the end. And for anybody who will see the video after, if you want to comment, send any information, question, or whatever, remember to subscribe to the channel. Everything that I will receive from you, I will send to Gregory. In the comments and in the bio, there is all the channel of Gregory, Instagram, TikTok, everything. So if you have any other curiosity or whatever, just ask and we will be glad to receive it. So have a happy evening and to you. So see you tomorrow. We will have another stream. I will update the community from the YouTube channel. Still, thank to all the people that was watching, and also to Gregory.
Thank you.
See you soon, guys. Ciao.